Hello everyone. So, this is going to be the first episode of something I'm going to call Spiritual Successor. The main premise is I'm a game developer, and I'm going to take a look at old games that I feel should have gotten a sequel, and I'm going to take a look at what it would take to make a spiritual successor to such a game. And the reason I call it Spiritual Successor is because we're not going to be trying to recreate the exact same game with all the exact same levels, with all the exact same stuff. No. We're going to try and make something that takes huge influence from the game we're looking at, but ultimately will have its own levels and take on its own identity. And maybe, who knows, maybe these things become their own commercial products. But it's a lot easier when you're not trying to relate to somebody else's intellectual property and trademark. So, we're going to take a look at Diddy Kong Racing. This game was released in 1997. I have many memories of just watching my father play this game until I one day erased his save file because I couldn't read and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And apparently he had beaten the entire game, unlocked everything. And, yeah, I took the time to do a full playthrough of the game recently. And, there's some tough bosses, and I kind of feel bad that I unwittingly deleted save file, like, 20 years ago. But, anyway. Let's take a look at what this game has, and why I love it. I just love this game so much. Like, I love it enough that I want a spiritual successor for this game to exist. So, we can do turns, and I'm using Pipsy because, as far as I know, she controls the best in the game. There's characters that are faster, have faster top speeds and stuff, but Pipsy has the most control. And this is what I'm going to be basing the main driver and our recreation on. So we can drift. If we do sharp turns, these red trails also appear. If we ram into a wall, we bounce back. And if we talk to this guy, we can change our vehicle. So with the hovercraft, at least with this driver, hovercraft's a lot more slippery. I know with one race I had to use a different driver, known as Bumper, to be able to do turns on this a lot better. Because this is like, the hovercraft is a lot more slippery than driving. But yeah, with this thing you don't really drift. Pressing the bumper makes it bounce up and down. If you crash into a wall, I don't think we really bounce back, do we? Okay. Now let's check out the plane.
Hello, friend. Select your vehicle.
So, the plane is able to fly, of course. And then we're able to do sharper turns. So this is like the plane's equivalent of drifting, I guess. Not really, because it's in the air, but same button. Now the one thing that made this game unique is that it's the only racing game with a full-blown adventure mode. And boss races, and it somehow also managed to mix being a collectathon into the game as well. So, let's go on and fly into here. There's also a few quirks to this game too. So when driving, when you have these boost pads, right? One thing I didn't realize is that if you're supposed to release the A button when you hit them. And if you do that, you actually get a bigger speed boost. If you hold on to the A button, you actually slow yourself down on the boost pads. Or at least the boost does not boost you as far as it would otherwise. Another thing too, is if I switch to the speedometer here, right now I'm holding the A button, but if I start tapping it, I'll actually go slightly faster. And that slight speed increase gives a huge edge over time. That lets you like completely overtake other drivers. It makes some of the bosses a lot easier or the boss races a lot easier. Oh no. So that's another thing, you got abilities, power-ups. So kind of like Mario Kart, you can pick up abilities, but if you collect the ability more than once, they stack together and you get a more powerful version of that ability. So I had a trap I could set that was an oil spill, but collecting that green balloon again gave me a bomb. Blue balloons do a speed boost, and the more blue balloons you collect, the bigger your speed boost is. You also have missiles, which are red balloons, and if you let those stack, you can shoot more missiles. Now winning races also gets you these golden balloons, which lets you unlock more levels of play. But another thing is when you complete all the levels in a given area, you get to fight a boss. Like a boss race. Like in this area, you would race against a Triceratops. And when you beat that boss, he tasks you with going through all of the levels again. But you have to collect these 8 silver coins. So the game kind of becomes a collectathon on top of being a racing game at that point. And then once you do that, you race the boss again, but that boss is a harder race for you.
I challenge you to a race. Alakazoo.
Now right now, this genie of this island, that's what he is, wants to race us around the island. And there's one challenge per vehicle. Now if we want to see how far behind us he is, we can, let's look at the mini-map here. I'm tapping A to just completely overtake him. Just holding A ain't gonna give us a speed boost.
Hello, friend. Bye-bye for now.
So that's the biggest thing. Before we start recreating this, we need to understand how the game kind of works and functions. And I've given just a basic overview of how the game works. So you might be thinking, okay, you want to make a spiritual successor, but Ryzen has already made a recreation of this area of the map. Or at least of the vehicle and driving and all that. So why bother? It looks fairly visually stunning and all that stuff. We'll take a look at that quick. So yeah, Ryzen made a remake of this. Or at least the intro sequence and whatnot. And yeah, so far it's visually nice. It looks upscaled and everything. All the models and everything look a lot more modern. This is an Unreal Engine 4. Although those trees could be better. The model looks higher resolution in the N64 version for sure. But it kind of looks like one of those clay statues that you buy to paint. He looks less like an elephant and more like a statue. And then those animations just don't look that great. But other than that, let's take a look here. So yeah, this looks like the main area. It looks very pretty. Driving around feels decent. Let's try and do some of the stuff that the other game has. So, okay, if we bump into a wall, what happens? Okay, we just have a dead stop. We can back up though. we got the red trails. But the other game, like, when you bump into something, to really emphasize you bumped into something, it actually bounces your vehicle back. We don't really have that in this remake. The drift, but we don't, as far as I can tell, there's no way to drift. So drifting is non-existent. We can't honk the horn. Like, a lot of people might be focused on, at least when they see a video of this, you might be thinking, yeah, this looks great. But the most important thing is the gameplay here. So, there are a few things missing, a few nuances that are missing. Also, we've got like the concept of being able to like drive around, but we don't have the ability to switch to a plane or a hovercraft. But I'm just gonna chalk that up to those things just not being created yet. Let's get to the meat of the video. Let's get to actually piecing together a remake. Alright, so one of the main things we're going to keep in mind with this is we're not going to be worrying about visuals for the majority of this. Visuals are one part of making a game, but they are not the end-all be-all. We need working mechanics first, so we need to create something called the minimum viable product, which is the absolute minimum that we need to make our game function. And the minimum we need is some ground. So create a plane. We'll make it 100 by 100, I guess. This plane's going to need a texture. So I'm going to create a folder called Materials. I'm going to create a material called ground. I'm going to drag that on there. And this isn't a tutorial, so I'm just going to be whizzing through. But if you're the type of person who wants to, get the general gist of what has to happen, hopefully this is something that's interesting. Okay, so we want to make a checkerboard. So making a checkerboard is relatively easy. So let's make an 800 by 800 texture, I guess. It's a little large, but I've got a graphics card that's not going to care too much. So, I don't know. Let's just... Actually, it doesn't have to be a checkerboard thing. This is going to be a crude thing. It's developer texture. It doesn't have to be good. All we care about is we need a placeholder. We're going to drag checker texture right there. Holy crap, that's a big texture. A little too big. We're going to go to this thing called tiling, and we're going to, screw with the number here. Make it 1,000 or something, or 100 maybe. Whoops. I copied and pasted something that's not valid. Okay. So we got this really huge plane. And not a plane as in an airplane, but a plane as in a flat surface. It's got a mesh collider. So that just means that it's got a collider on there that's going to tell us not to fall through. And, okay. We need to be able to drive something. So, you would think we need a vehicle model, right? We need a 3D model of a vehicle to make our vehicle. No. We'll need that later, but right now, the easiest way we can make a vehicle is we're going to make a cube. Okay? But you may be thinking, okay, that doesn't really look much like a vehicle. No. But, we're going to make this kind of look more like a vehicle. You might be thinking, well, we need a character that's going to drive it too. Yeah, at some point, but not right now. So, we got a box, and what else do we need? We need wheels, right? And just to drive home the fact of how much we do not care about how things look right now, we're going to take this cube. We need some wheels. You might be thinking, well, these are square wheels. How the heck could you drive with those? That's not realistic. And yes, you'd be right. We're going to swap these out for something better at some point. But again, minimum viable product. What do we need to make this function? What mechanics do we need to make work first before we proceed further? So, I'm going to quickly label these. So, and, okay. We need a driver, right? So, let's introduce... Oh, whoa. I copied the whole thing by accident. But, yeah, we need a driver, so I'm going to copy one of these wheels, these square wheels, and we're going to make this pop out a bit. We're going to call this driver Cubey McCube or something. Okay, so we got our driver. Cool. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so we got these square wheels. They should at least be black or something. They should at least be the color of a tire. So, yeah, we'll do that. We'll make them black. At a minimum. And we're going to make this black. Okay. And let's create another thing called driver. Our driver is going to be red. Now, I need to double check something. Can I rotate these without them going all funky? Okay, that's an issue. So how can we rectify that? So this cube is scaled weird. I'm going to have to make a new cube that is scaled properly. I drag it kind of up here a bit. I'm going to drag all these tires back in. I'm going to drag them to cube 1. It should be all proper. Now this cube here has a box collider. We're actually going to get rid of this thing here called a mesh renderer. We're going to center this. Oh, we're missing the driver aspect. I'm going to center this. And then actually move this down so that's center to the ground. I'm going to select everything else and bring it back up. These tires, I'm going to get rid of their collision. They don't need collision. Now this box collider, we're going to kind of resize it a bit. Move it up a bit. So that's just under the tires. Now, we've got our basic vehicle. And you might be thinking, this looks terrible. Yes, it does. But that's not important. We've got our basic vehicle. We need it to drive. We're going to give it a rigid body. And collision detection, we're going to use continuous for now. Constraints. Now for constraints, down here, we don't want this rotating in any weird angles, so I'm going to disable any form of rotation. Now this isn't going to affect steering, so you're just going to kind of adjust this hitbox a little bit. And we should be good to write our first bit of code. So a new script called scene. Oh, whoops, I'll create a new folder. New folder called scripts. And we're going to create the script called player controller. So we're going to go in, double click it, and we're going to open up Visual Studio, which is what I used to program in. Some people use Model Develop, but it's a lot hard to obtain that nowadays. So, we need a few things. Tires need to spin. So, this is where things might get a little more convoluted. So, we need a way to keep track of the front tires. So, we got this bit of code here for telling us what the front tires are. We need to know what the back tires are. So, we got some code here telling us what the back tires are. Okay. So, that's all we need from the outside world. We need to be able to move. So we're going to use fixed update, because physics calculations should not be based on frame rate. I'm sure some of you might know what that feels like, especially when a company does a bad port job of a game. Okay, so one more thing is we need to know what our physics object is. We use something called a rigid body, and this is responsible for physics. So now we're going to add code for telling the thing to drive forward. So there's a few things I'm going to do here. We want to know what the x-axis is. So these will get input from the controller. Next, we need to do some extra stuff. We want to have precise control over how the thing moves, and kind of nerf the physics engine a little bit, because relying on raw physics is not fun to control. So let's not deal with that. And we're going to do this extra bit of code. Don't ask me why it works, it just does. And we're going to need to be able to steer. Okay. So here, we're going to tell it what rotation we're going to give it, which is the player's vertical, or I think horizontal, stick location. So let's get that working. Okay. Step 2, the camera needs to follow. So, or follow the player, so let's get that going. Oh boy. I built this the wrong direction. Okay. So, this point doesn't really matter. Let's add our new script. Drag our whoops, I don't want to affect the mass. Drag our rigid body in, and we're going to change something else too. So let's get our front tires. You may notice the back tires are front tires and the back tires are the front tires. That's because I had to make a correction, and I'm too lazy to rename anything. I'm going to save the scene. I'm going to call it test. Or actually, I'm going to call it main. So let's run this and see how much of this functions and how much of it is broken. Okay, can we move? Yes, we can move. Awesome. So you might be thinking, okay, well, we're moving. Doesn't feel like the game, doesn't look like the game. Well, it's not going to try and look like the game, but we at least want the controls to feel like the game, right? So, yeah, we're going to work on that. First we want to be able to do is adjust the speed. Okay, so we got a few new values. Top speed, acceleration, and handling. So, let's get to it. Top speed will, of course, affect the speed. We also need a thing called current speed. So current speed is equal to vector3.lerp. We kind of want to transition between not moving to going as fast as we can. Or actually, we don't want vector3.lerp. Now I'm going to separate these two. Okay, so now we can adjust our top speed, our acceleration, our handling, and the current speed. So 5, let's do 0.1 for acceleration. Handling, let's set that to 2. And so another thing is deceleration. Let's see how that works. So let's check this out. Okay, we can move around. Now it feels like starting to drive happens a little too fast. Now if we increase the top speed, let's see here. What if we increase it to 10? So right now this just feels like something that instantly starts and stops. So we got to tweak values. So let's tweak the deceleration. Okay, so we're still sliding along. Let's make that a little less aggressive. Or a little less slippery. So we can see that we can decelerate. A little too slippery. We literally just have to keep tweaking values. Okay, so 0.05 feels comfortable. So let's keep that. And turning just does this, right? So we've got some basic stuff. There's a lot more we'll have to work on. But we've, at a minimum, have something that can drive forward. And it doesn't seem like much. We're going to have a lot more to work on. But literally, you want something that drives, we got something that drives. But that's as much as I can do for this episode. I'm starting to get tired. But we will continue this. And if you're interested in this, I'll keep doing it. So a few things we're going to want to tackle is, let's take a look at this game quick. Just to compare. So we drive, and we can decelerate. Now let's go back to this. We can go forward, and there's a little bit of deceleration. We don't got sound effects. It doesn't look pretty, but effectively, we've got that much done. Feel free to like this video if you liked it. I want to do more of these until we got, you know, something that resembles something that you'd want to play. So, yeah. Want to keep up with my future content, feel free to subscribe. And, yeah, with that all said, I'll see you guys in the next video.